The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any other agency, organization, employer, or company. The content provided in this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be construed as legal, financial, medical, or professional advice. All discussions of crimes, accusations, or legal matters should be considered alleged unless proven in a court of law. Always seek the advice of a qualified professional with any questions you may have regarding a particular matter. Listener discretion is advised. Enjoy the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Out of Control with Mel. I'm Mel, and today I have a guest, Amy Sousa. Hello. So Amy Sousa is a depth psychologist, and she can explain a little bit what that means. I've spoken to Amy before. If you're familiar with that conversation, that was a great one. You are such a wealth of information and knowledge, and I love the way you approach everything because it's very like your whole thing about like the Red Riding Hood. Good Lord, my words are escaping me. The analogy of the Little Red Riding Hood thing, but you're very good at making things accessible. There we go. So thank you for talking to me again. It's really nice to see you.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I really appreciate it. And I think these conversations are so important because I think, people like me, we write Substacks and we have articles and we talk online. But I think these conversations are actually where a lot of the nuance comes out, and it's always a good opportunity to re-explain and re-explore the topic. And the more we are all re-exploring the topic all together, I think the more comes out. And yeah, I've been writing and organizing on the subject of transgenderism, gender ideology, how that intersects with women's rights, how that intersects with safeguarding and our instincts and our ability to live in our perceptions, our direct perceptions, rather than kind of a cognitive loop or a dissociative state. So I've been talking about this since, I guess, pre-COVID, so a number of years. As I was saying to you before we went on, I organized an event with Dansky called Women Picket DC, where we marched in front of the White House and held an event in front of the White House. Suzanne Vierling was there speaking, and a number of women who have been long active in this in the United States were there and were a part of it. And that was in direct response to Biden's executive order, which basically changed sex at the federal level into gender identity and anything that had to do with federal policies, federal buildings, public education, schools. So it's kind
Amy,
of interesting to be here today when we're getting a new executive order, which is like mind blowing.
yeah, so today we're recording on the day of the inauguration. So we don't know when the episode will go up. It shouldn't be too many days later, but that's what's happening today. A lot of people have no idea what Biden did. People that I know in my life personally, they have no clue what that was. So the thing that you're talking about now, was that the Title IX thing or was this something else?
No, it was Biden had an executive order on gender identity, and it was, let me see if I can see it right
Oh,
here.
right, like the
It,
definition.
yeah, it's Executive Order 13988. Basically, it was about preventing discrimination on the basis of gender identity. And what that executive order did is at the federal level, so in any government building or government institution or any organization that received federal money, like public education, like libraries, like the post office, and of course, anyone who works in government, it put in place that anywhere where you might have a sex discrimination policy, it replaced sex with the word gender identity. So he put that executive order into place on day one of his presidency.
And none of us knew, right? Like it felt like there was a big
No.
announcement.
It was pretty much under cloak of darkness. I mean, there were, like I said, there was a small group of us that knew about it. There was, and maybe there was, those of us who were online knew about it, and then, we organized around it. Probably at our protest, we maybe had almost 200 women who came from all over the United States to Washington, D.C. We did a big press conference. We, did a big, we had like a podium and speakers, and had speakers speaking on in front of the Capitol building and across from the White House. And we definitely were aware of it and protesting at the time. I think Kara Dansky did an interview with Tucker Carlson that night and spoke about it, spoke about the executive order and what was happening. So it was like a blip on the radar, but it was not in the general public consciousness at all.
Well, where it
And I
should
don't,
be.
yeah. And I don't think it became in the public consciousness until the policies started coming into play, until we started seeing, more and more boys in girls sports, until we started seeing, more and more men invading women's locker rooms and bathrooms and spas and private spaces, until we saw women started being sued under Title IX for sexual harassment, for rejecting men, saying no to men in their spaces. So I think once those things started happening, a lot of people started waking up and being like, why is this? Why are we having this? Where did this come from?
Right. Well, of course, and the people that were waking up to that were people who were able to see it either online or in whatever media they were consuming. But the majority of people I know weren't seeing it at all. So still not aware. So now plan goes into place under dark of night, is being enacted, causing problems, but those are also being covered by mostly the left wing media. And so still, when I started talking about things, like a year and a half ago when we first met, everyone's like, what are you talking about? No, 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 push back, push back, push back, making me sound like a lunatic or like I'm a liar or like I'm exaggerating. And here we are a year and a half later, a lot has changed,
Hmm.
good and bad. But I had a conversation with someone a couple days ago who I was talking about the Title IX thing, which you could probably explain as well. And they had no idea what I was talking about because they were like, I'm trying to understand your support for Trump. And I was like, well, it's a lot that you're missing out on because you're being spoon-fed some things. But I used Title IX as an example, and they said, oh, I don't know anything about that. And I don't blame them, but also like this is what we're dealing
Yeah.
with.
Yeah. I think I these things are, you really only know about them if they directly impact you, so if you do sports or have a child who does sports and you see what's happening, or if you're a sports fan,
Mm.
you will see, the impact of men in women's sports. And there's a really great source called hewon.org. And I was just looking at it the other day, and there are over 11,000 times that men have stolen women's sports opportunities on a major level.
Wow.
This is not just on the level of, little league. These are professional competitions. So anyone who says, it's not really happening, like that's 11,000 events are represent tens of thousands of women who missed out on opportunities because of these men who had, because it's not just the sports opportunities that are being stolen by men. It's also women's records are being absolutely reset and demolished by men, and to such an extent that women are not going to catch up to these records.
Yeah, they'll
Men.
have to be scratched from the books at some point so that we
Yeah,
can go back to actual real data.
yeah,
Can't
yeah,
have odd numbers like that in there. It fucks all the data up.
yeah.
I love
No.
data.
The reason people wonder why they haven't heard about this. Now, of course, those of us who are in this fight and following women like Jennifer Bilek, we know that there's a lot of money and financing behind this that is fueling a really one-sided discourse. And of course, that discourse is really controlled by leftist media, which is, a huge part of mainstream media. And it really controls the what we're allowed to think, how we're allowed to even talk about this subject, and who gets heard, whose voices gets heard. And I was gonna bring up the book because you said about
Yes,
empathy,
yes, yes, yes.
and I happen to be reading it. It's a term that I actually first heard from the activist Jennifer Thomas, but I started researching it myself, and I'm actually working on something based on this book. But the empathy
Well,
trap, of
whenever I
course.
bring it up to people, I always put a link to our conversation and I'm like, talk to Amy Sousa about empathy traps because I need constant reminder. Because I,
Yeah.
raised to just be like, whatever, floats your boat as long as you're not hurting anybody. But yeah, go on. Sorry.
Well, the thing is, it this ideology, and maybe, more moderate people who are listening will be shocked, but the ideology of transgenderism is a kind of a sociopathy, to self-mutilate, to mutilate the genitals of kids, to put kids on chemical castration drugs, which is what Lupron is. It's used for serial sex offenders in prison, and we are giving it to children, and it 100% chemically castrates them just as it does grown men. So this is a kind of sociopathic thinking. It's a sociopathic ideology. But what happens in empathy traps is the sociopath needs something to hook the empath, because people who are empathic, which is a natural response of actually most animals, especially most mammals, to have empathy. It's not we think of it as a moral value, but really it's just a response. If I saw you fall down, and you bruised up your knee or something, I would, oh, I'm so sorry. Ooh, that looks like it hurts. We wince in response, in empathy. That empathetic wince it's a natural reaction. It's an involuntary response that we have to another person's pain. And when we, in the West, for example, we hear about FGM, we think, oh, how could they do that to their girls? Oh, how could they harm their girl children like that? And we act like we have a lot of higher moral values, but we're mutilating kids' genitals right here, right in the United States, right in Western countries, in Canada, and the UK, in Spain, and in all of these places, this is being done. And it's like we've forgotten that empathetic wins when it comes to harming children, and that is because of the empathy trap. So instead of thinking of, oh, we're blocking kids' puberty, we're chemically castrating them, we're cutting off their breasts, we're putting them on endocrine destroying hormones, which when you are on massive hormones that are meant for the opposite sex, it's going to crush your endocrine system. Instead of having empathy, we're told that these poor kids are born wrong. They're just born in the wrong body, and they need these plastic surgeries. They need cosmetic surgery, and they need drugs because they're born wrong. So that's the trap. The sociopath needs a trap for the empath to hook them and to get them to displace their appropriate empathy into an ideology. So this is how they hook us. And this is, this it's not just in news media, which is where the narrative is taking place, but it's in entertainment media, and it's on social media. It's on what do you call it, like HBO shows like Euphoria that are targeted at teens, and it's so cool to be trans. And it's on social media with their popular influencers who have millions of followers, and they're just like, the Dylan Mulvaney's who are like, look at my clothes, and look at my purse, and look at my makeup, and look at my bag.
Amy, I'm about to stick a fucking packer in my pants. If I don't start being eligible to make fucking money for what I do, I'm doing it. I can't.
I know.
Obviously, I'm kidding, but like, yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah, the influencers.
Mhm.
TikTok's a whole other
Yeah.
subject because
I mean,
that's
I hope you start making millions from influencing. I would like to make a few pennies here and there myself. But
right.
it's like we're not we're not we're the heretics, we're not saying things that are like fun and flirty and like, you can't we can't really talk about this and be like buy makeup or and buy this product and and
It's
have a Bud
also
Light.
not fun at a dinner party. No one wants to hear about mutilating children. Nobody wants to fucking talk about that, obviously. Why would you want to?
Yeah,
So yeah, it's hard to spread the word.
yeah, yeah. And people often think you're exaggerating, and they also think that there's just so much there's so much be nice propaganda. There's so much of what is it? Amnesty International has their whole campaign, I am who I say I am. It just sounds like so great or just the ACLU's, trans women are women, and people feel like, well, I just use, pronouns because it's just polite, not thinking I am participating in my own cognitive disruption. And I always say, when I say it plain to people, I say, when people ask me why I don't use pronouns, I say, oh, it's just because I just refuse to groom kids. And I actually made a friend and colleague of mine cry because she was like, what do you talk? I don't groom kids. And I was like, well, you have as part of your program, you have a circle up and you go around and you all say pronouns. So how would a kid opt out of that? So they're supposed to say to you, the leader who's pushing it, that they don't believe in it. So if they don't believe in it, you're teaching them that to be a part of the group, that they must believe in it. So you're grooming them. Do you see? And she was like, she was kind of doing like literally like one of these, like, no, no, I'm not, no, I'm not, no, I'm not. And I was like, well, yes, you are though. And she cried and she was mad at me. And I was like, but you're crying because you see that I'm right, because that's what you're doing.
Right.
You're telling kids I can't trust my body. I can't trust the authority of my eyes, which is, what you were mentioning, that's the Little Red Riding Hood
Yes.
that I always talk about. It's a 16th century tale that is still relevant to this day. It's a safeguarding tale, and if we look at that story, what happens. She meets him in the woods. He's very charming. She shares some of her business, but he goes, dresses up in the grandmother's clothes. And the thing about the story that's key to remember, she sees accurately. She sees the situation accurately. She sees, wait, what big eyes you have, what big ears you have, what big teeth you have. Her direct sensory perceptions of the situation are 100% accurate, but she allows him in his charming way to talk her out of her own direct perceptions of the situation. That's where she gets into trouble. That's why she gets eaten, because she doesn't trust herself and her own instincts and her own eyes and ears. She listens to the charming stranger and gets herself eaten. This is what is ultimately, in a sense, happening to us as a culture, where we are allowing this ideology to talk us out of our own instincts. And people act like we're beyond our instincts now. We're higher than that now. We're better than that. We've evolved past our instincts. Well, no, because like any animal, our bodies, our instinctual responses are still our most valuable safeguarding tool that we possess. And it's the basis of actually all of our morality. Like I said, empathy it's not a thinking value. It's a sensed reaction. It's an instinctual reaction. The same with justice. Justice, all animals have a fairness instinct. It's reciprocity. In the primate arena, you groom me and then I groom you. And if I don't groom you, if I don't practice reciprocity, you're like, hey, that's not fair.
My
I
favorite
think
is
so.
the study where they're feeding the grapes to the one monkeys and they're feeding something else, just the normal thing. And then they're like, hey, what's going on over there? They start shaking the thing. And
Yeah. So you see that these what we think of as like, oh, we're humans, we're above the other animals, we're so enlightened. All of these are their instincts and integrity in communication. Crows have this thing where they will squawk if there's a predator. But every once in a while, there's a crow who will squawk like there's a predator, and all the other crows will fly off. But it's really because he wants to zone in on the food. And if the other crows get this, they'll be like, no, we're not buying it. So, they reinforce integrity in communication. So all of these things that we are saying or at least I am saying when I am, being an activist or trying to tell people why this ideology is so harmful, because in all of those ways, this ideology dissociates you from all of these very important primal instincts, which are also the basis of our social morality system. So it's an instinctual disruption, but it's also just an ethical, moral disruption that is not healthy for a well-functioning moral society. These are all literally demoralizing values.
yeah, dangerous. Yeah, the reinforcement. So positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement, they both work. Reinforcement works. They know this.
Mhm.
And that's why they have to put these things into law because otherwise none of it would be reinforced.
Yeah,
They have to force the reinforcement. That should
yeah,
be a big red flag to everybody.
yeah, absolutely.
Putting language, changing the language in the law. Well, a lot's happened since we last spoke. So can you talk a little bit about what the Title IX thing was as well before we move on?
Oh yeah. And so with Title IX, that basically it impacted that gender, that or Executive Order 13988. It impacted Title IX. It impacted also basically impacted all things, all orders that already had to do with sex. So it impacted the discrimination laws that we had around sex, and it impacted Title IX. And then Biden actually tried to basically deepen that and formalize those changes that already were happening under the Executive Order 13988. But he tried to formally change the exact wording within Title IX.
Okay.
It's still, that order still, regardless of what he did directly to Title IX, his executive order already changed it. But if he had been able to change Title IX itself, because executive orders can just be dismissed by other executive orders. So they're, like his order is done today
That's
because
why I'm smirking. I'm like, I wonder what's happening in real time right
yeah.
now. Like, what is the pen doing?
Yeah, yeah. So, because presidents can just undo these orders, but it would have been a lot harder if he had been able to rewrite Title IX. That would have been a lot harder. But Title IX, which is about sex discrimination and sex fairness, it's about having equal opportunities for women and girls. It largely protects women and girls' ability to have equal access to sports, although it is not specifically it's weirdly like not specifically saying women. It's basically saying that women deserve our own sports, and this is because we're not as physically capable. We're in general, we're shorter, we're smaller, we don't have as great of lung capacity, heat dissipation, blood oxygenation, grip strength, fast twitch muscle fibers, for all these reasons that men are, physically more capable. Women deserve our chance for fair play because men's sports are technically not sex-based sports. Women can and do try out for the NFL. They just can't compete. You know,
Right.
I think there's one college team that I heard of where a female soccer player was able to be a kicker, but that is very rare. And that was the only thing she could do because she's not going to get tackled by a 300-pound dude.
No.
These guys are,
Wanting to do that anyway is just so like, get the hell out of here with your specialness. I, like, why do you, of all people, I mean, we don't need to get off on a tangent, but like, get over yourself. Why do you get to be the only one?
yeah, yeah,
Stop
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Your parents suck. Okay, so we know that that stuff's going to get reversed today, so that's good. What have you been working on? And well, first of all, you've been diverted from your work. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean it was a diversion that I think is also a deepening, but I have
Yes.
ultimately grappled with cancer since last April. And I am still in treatment for cancer. I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. I had a tumor growing in my right breast, and they give your tumor things that are called a Trottinger number, which is basically the how fast is your tumor growing. And on a scale of 1 to 10, my tumor was growing at a 10.
Oh, wow.
So it was.
How'd you notice? How'd you find out?
Well, I felt a little something in my breast.
Okay.
And let me be a lesson to any lady who wants to, and I, should have known better, but I was scared and I downplayed it. And I ignored it
What'd it feel like?
it felt like at first, like it felt like just like a little, like sort of peanut sized lump.
Okay.
And I've fibrous breast
Same.
tissue before, and it comes and goes hormonally. And so at first I was like, it's just that. And I'm at the age where I was, maybe I wasn't at the time, but I thought, well, maybe I'm going into perimenopause, because I'm right at that age. So maybe this is just part of perimenopause. And I read about cysts that can happen in perimenopause, and then I read all this stuff about cysts, and it was like cysts versus tumors. And if it's a cyst, it's like more malleable and it moves around within the breast. And I was like, well, mine's a cyst because I could feel it like moving and it wasn't like super hard. And I was like, it's just a cyst and it's gonna go away and it's part of perimenopause. And yeah. And then
How
the
long did that go on for?
a couple months.
Hmm.
And the guy I'm seeing was like, you gotta go get that checked. You know that, right? And
Oh, give him a shout out. All right.
I
You
was
know,
like, yeah, maybe I do. And I just, I think there was somewhere that I knew. I feel that,
I was gonna
looking
ask
back,
you that. Did you know deep down, like, oh fuck, this might not be okay?
I think so. I think so.
Oh. All
Yeah,
right.
it,
Well,
it's
then yeah, let that be a lesson to everyone. And like you said, like these are our most valuable and most ingrained instincts, like our sort of those initial responses to things.
Yeah, and the fear, I mean, the fear instinct is true too, because I think that was why I was like, I just I don't, I'm gonna want to look at it. I don't want to deal with it. Because I didn't want to start this whole process, which got started,
Yeah.
which was ultimately it was 6 really pretty grueling rounds of chemo, or yeah, I think it was 6 or was it 8? Doesn't matter. It was terrible. All
What's
my
a
hair fell.
What's a round of chemo? Like what's the time frame and what happens in that? What does that mean? Because we've all
Uh,
heard that throughout
so
our lives.
yeah, I had I was HR2 positive and progesterone positive. Those are two kinds of hormones that were present in my tumor. So basically the reason I'm saying this is because you have a chemo treatment. It's pretty much like 7 or 8 hours. And then during that time, you have four drugs. And I have I'll show you. I'll show you. I have this is a
Support.
port. Yeah, so under my skin is like this little port. I had to have a surgery to get that port placed, and it's like goes up my neck. Yeah, it's crazy. It's so
So,
weird.
so for 7 or 8 hours, you're sitting in that chair in the place doing the
And
popsicle thing.
they've got like a machine that's hooked up to you. It goes into your port, and then they're dripping the meds into you. So I had four different meds. Two of them are chemo meds. That hits everything in your body. That's why your hair falls out, my eyebrows fell out. That's that whole thing. And
Does
then
it
the
make you feel sick? I feel like I'd be nauseous the whole time.
They give you anti-nausea, but yeah,
Oh,
it definitely makes you feel sick. And even when I wasn't directly nauseous, it just makes you feel sick
mm,
everywhere,
okay.
everywhere, in every. It's like it doesn't feel like any sickness you've ever had before because you're not like, oh, I have a stomach flu. Oh, I have a fever. You're just like, I feel like I've been poisoned, and it's because I have been poisoned. I
Yeah.
feel like I've been poisoned, and it's because I have been poisoned because the chemo doesn't have there's two other drugs that they give you, and those are hormone targeted drugs that
Okay.
target the hormones within the tumor. So those are kind of smart drugs, but the chemo drugs, they just do everything. And I did also see a naturopath who has a specialty in cancer. And I did a lot of work with nutrition and supplements. And, it's possible people do have ways of using alternative approaches to address their cancer, but my tumor was growing at such a fast rate that I really didn't have time, or at least I felt like I didn't have time to take some sort of a slow, approach to
Right.
it.
Like a watch and wait, like
Yeah.
time to watch and wait. Yeah.
Yeah, because I did, there's a lot of research out there, cancer feeds on sugars. So a lot of the diet that I changed was to remove, sugar, alcohol, flour, grains, extra starchy foods, and to put my body in a place of ketosis, which would basically starve the cancer. I have a book over on that windowsill. I have a book over there called Starving Cancer. And there's a lot of research on how that can be used, but I really do. What I think my diet was able to do is they wanted to give me a mastectomy, and they really wanted to take my entire breast, and I was just fighting that till the end because that is it's your body, and it's also just to be a little bit intimate with audience, like it's a pleasurable part of one's body, and I was not ready to give that up. And kept telling me like how great of a, reconstruction they could do and how amazing it would be. But I was like, but if you take my nipple, I won't be able to feel, and like whatever you reconstruct, that won't give me any sensation. And like, I guess it's wonderful if it looks good for other people, but I don't look at myself all the time. I feel myself.
Right.
I'm not like, always checking I mean, of course I check myself in the mirror before I do things, but I don't spend time looking at my own breasts. I feel how they feel. So I really
That's
wanted
so
to,
important just to highlight for everything, including like the gender thing. Like, just let's pause on that for a second. Like, so
yeah,
much more important because, as you've pointed out before in previous conversations about how we are our bodies, and it's not that we experience them through a reflection in a mirror,
yeah,
we experience them in them.
yeah, yeah. I
People
mean,
just don't think.
these, kids who are, create, one cutting off their breasts, that sensation that you're never going to have. You're never going to be able to enjoy that sensation with a partner or on your own. Just the feeling of, and I do have, I'm getting it back, but even just, there's some residual numbness kind of under the armpit, where that's the part where the tumor was removed. So that's,
How
you
big
know,
was it?
at its biggest, it was 10 centimeters. And through the process of chemo and my diet, I shrank it to 3 centimeters.
It's like a golf ball?
Yeah. Yeah. It was at one point, it was protruding from my breast. You could see it like pushing out.
So when you first started and you noticed this, it felt like a peanut size. So it grew to the size of a golf ball in the source of
It
in
was
the space of.
probably like a walnut, and then yeah, it grew. But then it shrank back again. And during, because chemo is only given to you every 3 weeks, because basically they give it to you, you feel like shit, you cannot get out of bed. I mean, you just sleep. And I had a lot, I thank God for my family, and my friends. I had a number of friends visit me. My boyfriend was great, but I would have people with me, and I would like get out of bed in the morning and then be up for like maybe an hour or two, and then I would be like, I have to go back to bed. It just kills, because your body is just processing all this poison, and you do not have, you have no energy. And I didn't feel
Yeah.
as nauseous as I thought I would. Like, I thought I would have a ton of nausea, but what I didn't have was any energy. I would just be, like in bed for like almost a week. And then you start to feel better. You start to get a little bit better. And then the final week before, you get 3 weeks in between. And then that last week, you're like, oh my gosh, I kind of almost feel like myself again. And then they hit you with the poison again. So it's just like, months of that process of like I feel terrible, I feel okay, I actually kind of feel pretty good, and then yeah, I feel terrible again. Yeah, I'm glad you paused on that, because yeah, these kids who are cutting off their parts, those are sensations they can never access again.
And you talked about dissociation. I mean, that's how you would get them to ignore that, right? Dissociated from their bodies. Are they, can you describe dissociation in the way that you're referring to it? And just, can we talk about dissociation a little bit?
Yeah, because I would say the state of embodiment is the state of kind of being in oneself, being fully present, to yourself and to your senses, to the responses of your own body. The dissociation, I think it's different for each, and I'll kind of say, but I think, for some of the, detransitioners that we know of, we know that a reason that they went towards that ideology was because of sexual abuse. And that is a dissociation where you have basically compartmentalized your own body and then associated that part with the abuse. So whether it's your breasts or your genitals, so you're sort of you are creating a numbness within yourself, and a rejection of sensation in that part, because that is the part where abuse happened. And in previous times, any good counselor, therapist, social worker, if a child had come and said, I don't like my genitals, that would have been an immediate question, like getting to an understanding, like, is this child in a place of sexual abuse? That would have been the obvious thing to think. There are other reasons. There is internalized homosexuality is a reason that someone might internalized, not homosexuality, internalized homophobia is another reason that one might dissociate from their particular genitals. But the first question to figure out would be, have you been abused? Because to reject your own body is not natural. And now the third thing, so it could be sexual abuse, it could be internalized homophobia, and it could be fetish. So that's the other way that you could get into a dissociative state, because what fetish does is it also compartmentalizes and objectifies. So your excitement has been objectified into an image or a thing. Now we could make suppositions about whether paraphilias and fetishes themselves happen because of trauma, but you can be groomed into them through porn and through repetition, because using sexual excitement as a prompt, you can get people to do a lot of things. Torture often involves, sex. We know in kind of from the MK Ultra documents and torture, we know that people use this to groom and control. And that is another way that we could go into as dissociative state. But to dissociate is to first compartmentalize, to not feel your body as a whole system, and to objectify as well, to put an objectifying gaze on things, and then to reject the sensation from those parts. But I think, we see it. I mean, we're, you may be a little younger than me, but we're women of an age where we've been through that part of culture, because, think of, being young. I don't know how it was for you in high school, where girls will kind of stand around and be like, I hate my butt, or I hate my hips, or I hate my stomach, or I hate my breasts.
That's all we did.
That in itself is a dissociation. It's a compartmentalization, and it's an objectification, because that's our grooming. We're groomed into self-objectification. We can't get away from it. It's on, it's at the grocery store, on the magazines. When you go to the grocery store, are objectified women used to sell products. We see all the time. We see our bodies used to sell shit. So we get this internalized objectification. So it's very easy, when you're objectifying and compartmentalizing, to then dissociate. Like, well, I love myself, but I just hate my butt. Or I love myself, I just hate my nose. These
Yeah.
things don't mesh, because you're the whole thing. I'm the all of it. I am the all of it. The healthy path is to find integration, to find out, I don't know, maybe, I might have wished, that my nose was different, but I love that I can smell things. Some people lose their sense of smell, which, weirdly, this is a weird aside. People who lose their sense of smell commit suicide at a greater rate than people who lose their vision or hearing,
Michael
because
Hutchins.
because smell connects us most deeply to our memories and most deeply to our associations with, our loved ones, our lovers, and connects us to food and the environment and our nourishment. So people, who lose their sense of smell are at much greater risk for suicide. But this is to say, once what is healthy is to integrate the parts of myself that I have rejected, to reintegrate them into my all-encompassing self-love and into me, to associate it with me experiencing the world rather than me being looked at.
Ah,
Because this body is the only way that I have to experience the world. A lot of people, when I put online, we are our bodies, people will say, we're so much more than that. What
what
more?
else?
Where what else is there? And people will be like, well, I've had an out of body experience, whatever that means. But I was like, but the only place you are able to experience an out of body experience is in your body.
Spoiler!
There's no other where for you to have experiences except as your body. And I even challenge people when they say, no child is born in the wrong body, because that's actually a repetition of the narrative. We're not
Right.
born in a body. We're not like little implants that get implanted into a body and then wear the body around like a bodysuit that I control. We're born as a body. We are born embodied. And, one of the places that I go to in my work is, this is our first way that we know ourselves and the world. Because before we are cognitive, thinking, conceptualizing, abstracting beings, and sometimes with our giant, massive, prefrontal cortex compared to other animals,
Right.
we think about ourselves in this way. I think, therefore I am. But actually, in order of operations, our first way of knowing ourselves is as sensual sensing beings. An infant can root for the breast. It can use its instincts to seek out nourishment. An infant feels pain, it senses nourishment and pleasure before it has a thought, before it knows its own name. An infant is experiencing the world as her or his embodied self. So this is very primal and primary to our being. I mean, we're talking about it in a bit of a philosophical way, but
It's just
it's
so
just
interesting
literal.
because
It's just literal.
it's technically I am, therefore I have the ability to think.
Yes.
Lucky me,
Yes.
not the
Yes.
other way around.
Yes. Yes.
That's really brilliant.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about, because I didn't know that this existed when we first met and spoke. Can you talk about sissy porn and how that works? Because the phenomenon that it's turning regular married men that didn't have a porn problem, have been heterosexual their whole lives, happy marriage, happy life. How does watching pornography turn them into a skirt go spinny kind of gal?
Yeah. Yeah, I can talk about it. And just before I go, for anyone who wants to read more about it in depth, you gotta listen to Genevieve Gluck, or even just look at her Substack. But she talks about her research on this is very foundational
Okay.
to everyone who's talking about it. But in any case, but yes, this porn, it's like it kind of it uses repetition. It uses that ASMR kind of voice and quality, and it also uses the erotic response. And what it does is it is about forced feminization. It's about forced sissification, but there's always, of course, the erotic component and release at the end of it. So, we know Pavlov trained dogs from just literal food. You can train grown men using their erotic ejaculation response. So
Okay.
this is ingrained in them. It becomes associated with their eroticism where one, they start fetishizing other men who are being sissified. So there's like a dominator who is, forcing the feminization on the other man, and using humiliation, using, name calling, using, BDSM beatings, whatever, gross thing you can think of, that is what they're using. But there are men like Andrea Long Chu who have spoken about this. He's an academic. There's Grace Laverly, who is also an academic, who I think both of them are at Berkeley. I know Grace is Laverly, I should say Grace. I hate calling these men by female names. Laverly, I know he is at Berkeley for sure. I don't know if I think Long Chu is also at Berkeley, but I know he's an academic, and both of them have written books about this, where they speak about basically to be female is to be fucked. Long Chu says something to be a woman is to be submissive, is to be like an open asshole. And they both talk about their experiences of porn leading them into this. Not a lot of people know that the Matrix writers, the Wachowski brothers, are now the Wachowski sisters, and they have also spoken openly about how they came to this identity through porn, through an actual in-person dominatrix who put them through this. But this erotic response, they get groomed into it. And again, this is objectification of women, because it's objectifying that we are things, a thing you can put on, like earrings or clothes. We are things that you can literally put on you. And it's self objectification because they see themselves as the thing, to be humiliated and abused and sexualized. So this is a known paraphilia. So a paraphilia is an objectified sexual fetish, and there is paraphilia spoken about in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, which is what we use to diagnose people. This is all according to the American Psychological Association. So this is, very opinion based, but some of it is useful, some of it is not useful.
Correct.
Uh, but these paraphilias in the past, we know these paraphilias are one associated with other paraphilias. JenniferThomas also talks about this, and we know that exposure to paraphilias. So when you have exposure, especially to multiple paraphilias, she's calling this multiple paraphilia disorder. When you have exposure to paraphilias, you also are likely to get groomed into them. And what's happening right now is a lot of men are watching porn and becoming this. And then I don't know if you know about this one too. Some young men, there is such a thing as the Transmaxxing manifesto.
Oh no, what is happening?
So this is the incel culture, which is the involuntary celibates, the guys who can't get laid, are what is the Transmaxxing manifesto. It's very related to the sissy hypno porn, but this is where young men basically turn themselves into women so that they no longer have to be celibate. They basically
Mm.
become the girlfriend that they could never have.
Right.
And
Yes.
again, it is all about objectification and compartmentalization. And this, it goes very much into the values of a consumerist culture because one, the way our consumer capitalism functions, I don't know if there's another way for it to function, but we use objectified body parts, mainly of women, to sell shit. If you want to sell your widget, put a naked woman or a half naked woman in front of it, and they're gonna sell it. This is already really programmed into the culture, but these things are programming it even more. And this is why it's really dangerous and insidious that this is being pushed into the public through our entertainment, through our social media, and through it, because this repetition, this exposure to these paraphilias, as I said, it is literally demoralizing. It's demoralizing, emotionally, because we can't name reality, and because we are confronted with all of this fetish and objectification, which dissociates you from the actual possibility for connection and intimacy. These objectifications, they're harmful because people are literally self-harming their body, but they are also harmful because they dissociate you from actual intimacy, and this is how this is the other way that we primarily take care of one another. We take care of each other. We take care of ourselves through our relations, through our connections. As someone who has gone through and is still going through, a major illness, cancer, the big C, I would not have been able to do this without my community of family and friends. These
Right.
connections are what also help heal us. And intimacy is a massive value. And when we demoralize the culture by erasing morals, those connections are less and less possible. And I don't know if you have read the statistics, but this generation of kids, which is being raised on, instant access to porn through their phones and sexualization on television, like the kind of sexualization we see on television today, that was porn 50
Right,
years.
I know. I
Yeah.
hate it. I
Yeah.
hate it.
And we
I
are
Mhm.
exposed to it. We are exposed to grown men walking around in fetish gear in public. And this, yeah, this harms our ability to connect. And these kids are, in the first time in centuries, these kids are not having actual sex.
Yeah.
Like, can you imagine being a teenager and like not like, you know,
No, I can't.
trying to figure out how to have sex with, with your boyfriend or some guy, like this is what kids do. Kids sneak off in their cars. I mean, my my high school boyfriend had a van, and my parents were like, he is never driving you anywhere in that van. I know why they said that.
That's all
I know.
he ever did was drive you around in that van. I had a fire escape outside of my window in high school. Stop it. Everybody utilized that thing, coming in, going out, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it unless my parents wanted to stay up all night or like lock it or make my house. I mean, I was always grounded, but that's what the window was for. That's what the fire escape was for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I joke about it all the time online, but I'm like, bro, bring back smoking. Kids need to be smoking, drinking, making out, having a party, because I don't know what they're doing now, but it's crazy and it's not resulting in anything good.
No, no, because they're not seeing each other in person. I have a friend. She's got three teens at home, and they're all two boys and a girl, and they're online. They play video games. They're online, and she has literally told them she makes their bedtime be 10, and she has literally said, if you want to go out of the house and do an activity, go to a, friggin' Denny's and have dinner, or go to a movie and go to Denny's afterwards, you can stay out till midnight. But if you are home and being online 10, And they rarely choose going out.
Never go out. That's so sad.
I mean, I cannot imagine my parents being like, "We will extend your bedtime." I was always like, "Please,
I
please."
know, because it's like 11. You're like, make it 12. Always. We never wanted to be home. Oh, it's so sad. You kids don't know what you're missing. Not that any kids are watching this, but if any kids are watching this, go out. Go out and do something. I don't want to keep you. Where can you point people today on what you're doing and all that good stuff?
Well, please follow my Substack. I am getting back into it. My Substack is theknownheretic.com. I have a lot written. One thing we didn't touch on, but please come find it on my Substack is I have critiqued a lot of the DSM and specifically the diagnosis of gender dysphoria. So that is a great thing to know. And then I talk a lot about how this ideology manipulates us. A lot of the things that we talked about here, how it's a linguistic manipulation. And then the other thing that I am starting on my Substack, I've only done one episode of it, but I am starting a portion of my Substack called Instinct SOS. And each episode that's most of my Substack is written, but that's video essays, and each one goes into one of our instincts, why it is so important, why it is valuable. In the series, I am talking basically about why our instincts are so important to safeguarding and how they get hijacked by the culture, especially for those people who think we are above our instincts. When you start thinking that we are above our instincts, it is so much easier for the world to come and hijack that instinct. Because once you're saying, oh, they're not that valuable, you're going to get hooked. And maybe, hopefully, you're only hooked by like McDonald's. But,
Right.
there are a lot worse things that can hijack your instincts. So,
It's very culty. It's reminding me of like a very insidious cult tactic where they make everything like it's all your perception.
yeah,
It's all your
yeah,
perception. There's no good or bad. It's just what you're making it.
yeah,
Well, isn't that convenient if someone wants to abuse you?
yeah.
So yeah, we can't be above it. All of these things are in place for a reason.
Yeah. And like it's like thinking like when people think they're like above advertising, like I doubt it. I highly doubt it. Like, look at how all of us are dressed. Are you dressed in a weird way? Are you dressed in a way that like kind of reflects the current styles? Like
Right.
these things impact you. We're not no hardly anyone is above it, but the more conscious you are of how these hooks work, the better you will be at keeping yourself safe and keeping your instincts and intuition intact.
Yeah.
Oh, and then of course I'm on my biggest platform is I Substack is where it's the most information. That is the most compact place where you'll find my information. But I'm also known heretic on Twitter, and that's my biggest platform where you'll see me splash little thoughts all the time.
That's where all the cool kids are hanging out. I
It
wish
is. It
I wish
really is.
everybody would join us there. Maybe they
Yeah.
will now. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
see. The world's a changing. Any last thoughts, words?
No, I just yeah, this has been such a pleasure, and yeah, I'm happy to be back. This is you're the first person who's seen me sporting my
I
hair.
am. Oh,
Yeah.
I love it. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, it's really great to see you. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. By the way, your place is really cute too. I can see your background, but yeah, your place is cute. You look wonderful. It was really nice to catch up, and I'll let you know when things are going up on my end, and we'll be in touch in the exosphere.
I love it. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much. Thanks
Thanks
so much.
again, Amy.
Yeah.
We'll see you next time.
See you.
Bye, everybody.